Subject then, Arsenal, as they will be top of the table at Christmas, as they went 5 points clear of the chasing pack after a 2-0 win over Wolves, and that of course after Manchester City lost to Brentford earlier in the day. So Darren, 5 points clear at Christmas. Is this going to stop the doubters, do you think? Because plenty of people still saying they don't think Arsenal can do it, yet they're there.
Probably with good reason. I mean, City have won the title for the last 5 seasons. They normally come into their own over the winter months. The only difference, of course, is that we don't have no football over here in November and December. That said, I think as far as Arsenal are concerned, they can't stop winning. Their squad is beautifully constructed. The camaraderie and the work, the low points that they've gone through as well over the past 2 seasons are really... they've kind of bonded the group, because they get through their tough moments and then they produce moments of quality like we're seeing here from Martin Odegaard, and I think he probably exemplifies that squad, because when we always, when we talk about Arsenal, make reference to a documentary. I do it, I make no apology for doing it, because I think as far as that's concerned, it told us so much about the hard work that went on behind the scenes. When people doubted them, the people at the top never did doubt Arteta, and they stuck with him, and Edu Gaspar, the technical director. And when they changed the captain, they brought in Odegaard instead of Aubameyang. We thought it was a big call, but they kept winning. They kept winning and winning and winning. OK, they missed out on the top 4, but we're seeing now the best of Odegaard. And we're seeing now a team where there are multiple points of attack, and they've got a real strength in depth in defence. Why can't they keep it going all the way to the wire? That
goal, the second goal in particular, the build-up was delightful. It was like they were toying with them, weren't they? And Odegaard finished it off in the end. I mean, it is a wonderful goal. What impresses you so much about them at the moment, David? I mean, that flick is just sublime.
Yeah, they're getting back to the sort of football that Arsenal became iconic for under Arsene Wenger. And, you know, we've got to stop pretending that they're not in this title race. They're very much contenders in this. They've got themselves into a position where I think only 3 teams haven't gone on to win the Premier League, and on each occasion they were overhauled by Manchester City.
Yeah, who else won it but City?
So it could happen, of course, and I don't think Arsenal are getting ahead of themselves. But I do think, Vicky, this is an example of what patience and togetherness can do. They had a very clear vision. They stuck to it through good times and bad. They knew they wanted Arteta, because they came very close to appointing him when Arsene Wenger left in 2018. Went for Unai Emery on that occasion. Second bite at the cherry, there was no doubt. They went all out for him, and clearly with good reason. He won the FA Cup. He made some tough decisions around the likes of Mesut Ozil, later Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Not everything has gone to plan. But from the top of the club, with the Cronkies, Edu Gaspar, the executives, Vinay Venkatesham, Tim Lewis, who's come in on behalf of the ownership, supporting Mikel Arteta, they've almost slimmed it down, their structure, and they've bonded really tightly off the pitch. It's led to a similar picture on the pitch. They've used the transfer windows really effectively. They've done a lot of surgery to the wage bill as well. They've reconnected with the fan base. And whether Arsenal go on to win this title or not, I think they're on a really impressive path that has a lot of other clubs looking at them and saying, that's how we need to be doing it. And that wasn't the case too long ago. And it shows that things can change quickly in football. And for Arsenal, it's an incredibly promising time.
I remember there was a show we had, season 2, I think it was, and all the papers was they'd had a bad defeat, and all the papers thought that was the end. They were all adamant that was it. And we had you on in the big screen, and you said no chance. They are still going to stick by him, and they've never really wavered from that at any stage, no matter how low it got, did they?
No, I actually remember you asking me and being caught by surprise with my answer, because there was no wavering from the perspective of the Arsenal hierarchy. The ownership reassured Mikel Arteta at that period that they were all in on him, and that trickled down to Edu and other people around the club.
They obviously liked what they were hearing in terms of future plans, perhaps, because maybe that's what you want to hear from a manager.
A lot of us who speak to people within the game and reflect that they were telling us that Arteta was being seen by people at the very top level as potentially one of the best coaches in the future, and you sort of report that and you're ridiculed by many people who say, but look what's happening on the pitch. And there was a strong section of the Arsenal fan base who wanted Mikel Arteta out. But at Arsenal, they had the courage of their convictions to stand by him. And they've clearly mapped out where they want to go and how they're going to do it. And they appreciate there will be bumps along the way. And there are pressures because they've racked up debts. They've been out of the Champions League, managed to get themselves back into the Europa League. And it could still go wrong from here in the season. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I think what they did will be a message to others who might be considering changing and actually say, hold on a sec, Leicester have stood by Brendan Rodgers and they're flying now, relatively speaking. And so, yeah, Arsenal are on a good footing and it serves them well for the future. They've got a really nice blend of younger players and older players. Their academies producing. I think they'll still make some changes there around Edu, some of the recruitment setup. You know, Mikel Arteta has brought in set-piece specialists and they're always looking, like every club, for that little edge. The Kroenkes are backing them in the market. There's a report by Sam Dean in The Telegraph saying that Josh Kroenke, as the director, the son of Stan, is more connected than ever before.
Yeah, he's made a point of doing that, hasn't he, though, because there was a lot of talk, the fact that they were far too removed, but he came and met fans and he's made a point of doing that.
Yeah, and they're turning the perception around.
Yeah.
And winning does wonders, you know, even around Manchester United. If they're winning matches, the criticism of the Glazer family among the Man United fan base will probably never go away, but it quietens somewhat when they're winning matches. And Arsenal have seen that because their protests were pretty vociferous in their own right around the European Super League, outside the Emirates Stadium. You'll remember the scenes. But the evidence is there. And
don't you think that some of the protests and some of the frustration, the anger was around the fact that they couldn't see where the club was going? There are lots of old players who are probably treading water. But, and again, in that documentary, you see that board with all of the players, 3 for every position in Edu's office. And you know what his vision is. And there was that thing that sometimes was ridiculed, trust the process. But clearly they knew where they wanted to get to. And I always say, and you make the point here, we've talked about it many times on this show, they are now a blueprint for other clubs to maybe just think to themselves, let's put our foot on the ball. Let's not throw the manager overboard. Sometimes you do have to go through difficult moments to get to good moments. I hope we're seeing it now with, obviously, Brendan Rodgers. I hope we see it with Frank Lampard at Everton as well. We are far too deep in this knee-jerk culture of maybe bending and being worried by social media mobs and all of that sort of thing, rather than sticking by the process that some managers want to come in and implement.
Yeah, definitely. And you're seeing actually Manchester United, where Erik ten Hag, after they lost at Brentford, their disastrous start to the season, it emerged in the media that he had made them run the distance, that Brentford ran more than them in the game. And then a few days later, it was reported that he actually did the run with them and he went into the trenches and engendered that sort of sense of loyalty and togetherness. And I was hearing from people around United at the time that if things start to go wrong now, the players aren't going to turn on the manager. No. They're in it with him. They're going to look elsewhere within the club. And I think that's a similar thing at Arsenal. Yeah. They've created a bond with Arteta through some pretty difficult moments. Not everybody has got on well with him. We saw what happened with Aubameyang, with Ozil, with Mustafi, with Socrates. I'm not saying there were fallouts necessarily, but there was a lot of departures from that squad. They paid players to leave. It was pretty much unprecedented en masse. You know, a lot of contract terminations there that's being talked about at some other clubs now. Yeah. That may be what we need to do to get rid of bad eggs, to get rid, to form a nucleus that we can go forward with complete trust and commitment and buy-in. And Arsenal seem to have that now. They're a band of brothers, and whether it ultimately leads to what we're talking about now as a potential title, let's see. But they're set up really well.
If they don't, then, OK, so, and I don't want to burst their bubble, but they've not gone on to win the last 5 times they were top at Christmas. I mean, that does date back to somewhere like 1937 or something ridiculous. Not even any of us can remember that far back. But, you know, would it be seen as a failure by some if they don't go on?
If they don't win the title? No chance. At the start of the season, they were looking to be in the top 4. Yeah. So this is a surprise, but it's a pleasant surprise because it's really a testament to their outstanding recruitment. They've got so much depth in defence. Tomiyasu you would have thought at the start of the season, first choice right back. Ben White's been so good there that he's now going to the World Cup. Zinchenko and Tierney at left back. Saliba's been outstanding for them, and he's the first choice starter for them alongside Gabriel. Can't understand why he's not going to the World Cup. I think I was at the press conference on Friday, and Mikel Arteta was saying that in January they may still look again, and I can understand why, because if they get more depth up front, if they get maybe another midfielder, they'd be in an even stronger position. And we've seen years gone by, Harry Redknapp talks about when he had Spurs top of the league at the turn of the year, and he wanted Carlos Tevez and Gary Cahill, and he got Louis Saha and Ryan Nelson, and things famously fell away there. But I think as far as Arsenal are concerned, they're ahead of schedule. The only thing I'd say about Christmas is that this is the fewest number of fixtures ever in the Premier League by the time we've got to, what we're calling Christmas, if you like. There is a long, long way to go.
The one thing I might pick up on is their response to adversity. Historically, when Arsenal lost a high-profile match, say at Old Trafford, they would often go on a run of defeats, even in Arsene Wenger's more glittering reign. This time, I remember last season, they lost at home to Liverpool, and their next match was away to Aston Villa, who were somewhat resurgent under Steven Gerrard. And they actually went and won there. This season, they lost at Man United, and they could have crumbled after that, and they responded by winning. They lost at home to Brighton in midweek, and they still went and won their final match handsomely, really, in terms of that performance against Wolves to stay top at Christmas. And that sort of speaks of an inner resilience that wasn't quite there before.
Well, what you've done, you've teed me up quite nicely, because I want to show you one of the papers. First one today, the Telegraph. Now you're going to believe us. And I like the way, I like this for lots of reasons, because I think there have been doubts. We're talking now, can they do it? All of the radio stations everywhere, can they do it? And each time they win, either with flair, with character, defiance, if you like, it starts again. Let's just see that. Let's just keep that up there, because I just want to show the subdeck. Arsenal go 5 points clear, and it fires up that talk about the title last week. And we, in the show last week, we were talking about Mikel Arteta mentioning the T word for the first time this season. Yeah. But why would you not, if you're a big club like Arsenal, where you've got big players like these three?
Because all the pressure, that's why. Exactly right. As soon as you start talking the T word, that brings with it its own
But when
pressure.
you're at a club like Arsenal, and you will know this, you live with the pressure anyway. You have that. And every time you go to a press conference, there is... Let me just quickly give you some numbers, very, very quickly. Arsenal, the 8th side to win as many as 12 of their opening 14 games in the Premier League season. Each of the previous 7 has gone on to win the title. And it's their best ever points record, 14 games into a season. Bear in mind, they haven't finished higher than 5th since 2016. And I just think, as far as they are concerned, there is real reason, as David's been saying, for everyone around the club to be optimistic.